Hello and welcome to episode 301 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I'm one of the co-founders here at ETR, and we are coming off of a prove it kind of week. Yes, that's right. I thought there were five stone cold locks for cash on DraftKings in week 13. Gardner Minshew, Antonio Gibson, Sony Michel, Chris Godwin, Foster Moreau. And by the way, I don't mean stone cold locks just like in a vacuum. Like obviously Gardner Minshew's not like a fist pump play in a vacuum. But when we adjust for the context of the slate, how much he costs, how much other guys who want to play cost, I thought Minshew was a stone cold lock. But anyways, when there's five locks, and then when we also have these amazing expensive plays like Jonathan Taylor and like Cooper Kupp as well, these are the kind of slates that I like, because I really feel like if you didn't play the team I played or a close version of the team I played, you were just flat wrong, period. You know, and I know a lot of smart people played the Tom Brady, Jamal Williams over Gardner Minshew, Jonathan Taylor stuff. I think personally that's not even close, that the Minshew JT side is better. But my point in weeks like this, like when there's five, in my opinion, musts, it's not great for double ups. But for head to head, I mean, my God, man, you know, prove it to me that you can show up with this. Prove it that you know to ignore the Darrell Henderson active stuff. Prove to me that you understand the Chris Godwin bounce back spot in the context of a really bad wide receiver slate. Prove you know how big JD McKissick absence is for Antonio Gibson. And of course, as I look through my head-to-heads, very few of my opponents, my enemies, could prove it. I think in double ups or cash at higher stakes, higher level, a ton of people can prove it, right? And that kind of brings me to what I think is a more interesting conversation. You know, of course, there's these mouth-breathing dolts who every time a bunch of people have the same team in cash on DraftKings or on FanDuel, these people morons just start beaking off about cheating and collusion and secret chats and just other stupid shit that losers say. Like those people just can't grasp how clear-cut the quote-unquote right team is sometimes. You know, I really can't take those people. It tilts me so hard. But I do think like that stuff's not worth having a conversation about. What is worth having a conversation about is cash and what kind of edge you have. Like I personally, Adam Levitan, get the most incredible head-to-head action, right? I'm selling 200 to 300 games a week at buy-ins ranging from $5 to $5,000. And I'm very aware that I get this action because people want to play me. You know, he's a pseudo celebrity. He might cause a pseudo stir. You know, he's the dude with the dick jokes. They want to play. And I actually think that the action in single entry, large field double ups is still pretty good. But if you told me, Adam, I'm not selling very many head to heads. You know, I'm not selling head to heads to people, you know, who are making their lineups while shitting on Sunday morning. Or if you told me that only playing large field single entry double ups wasn't enough action for you, I wouldn't blame you at all for not playing cash and just focusing on tournaments. I really wouldn't. Like if you're going to sit here and bitch and complain that too many people have the same team, or it's just a 2v2 versus everyone you play every week or whatever, you know, life's too short, man. I don't think you're giving up a ton of EV by just going GPP bro only. But for me personally, like I'm not giving up the action that I get. There's just no fucking way I can do it. You know, I've been grinding my cock off for like 20 years looking for spots where I'm winning at 15 to 25%. I physically can't stop playing cash. You know, my body won't let me. But I get that I'm not everyone. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. I think game selection is by far the most important thing in DFS or poker or any peer-to-peer gambling game. And so I'm happy to talk about this more next week or whatever. Anyways, back to the slate. One thing I thought was interesting was the Chris Godwin ownership. In week 12, Chris Godwin was obviously a very good play against the Colts. He was 24.5% owned in the slant. On DraftKings, he fails with 6 points. The field, though, generally speaking, is sharp enough to understand that was a bit fluky. And this spot in week 13 against Atlanta was just even better for Chris Godwin. I think Evan on the Friday night show said that Godwin was going to impregnate the Falcons defenders, you know? So in week 13, nobody got off Godwin. I mean, he was 21.5% owned in the slant, massively owned in cash, you know, almost no change, no bias off the dud, which I think is just something to keep in mind going forward. And honestly, it's the exact reason, like this Chris Godwin thing is the exact reason we've shifted from doing manual ownership projections to a mostly algorithmic process with a little bit of, quote unquote, finger on the scale, manual adjustments. It's just more and more people are using process-based and projection-based building rather than phone-shitting roster building strategy. One thing on tournaments that I think was relative to week 13. So I played 8 tournament teams and none scored more than my cash team, right? So did really well in cash, got my dick kicked in tournaments. And I think it was a really interesting setup for tournaments this week, whereas in weeks past, I could feel that some of the plays people were condensing on weren't that strong. I mean, this week, how does Sony fail at 4,300? How does JT or Cup fail? How does Antonio Gibson or Eli Mitchell or Brady or Godwin? Of course, anything can happen in one NFL game, but given pricing and setups, it was really tough, I thought, to be contrarian and still make good plays. And that's not typically the case. This was an outlier week for the strength of the cash lineup. If you're a subscriber, I'd encourage you to check out the GPP review I did with Leone yesterday, and I do with him every Monday, where we talk through a lot of this stuff. In high scoring weeks, in weeks when the cash lineup scores 180, I think something the ultra contrarian GPP bros like Leone, they just have to take the L sometimes. It's just important to remember, what do you win when you win? When you just say, I'm taking the L is 1x, one week, one set of buy-ins. But the W's are 5x, 10x, 20x, 100x, whatever. Okay, last thing before we get to the listener questions, the 5th ever Established Run Subscriber League went down Sunday. Big congrats to Bruh Man 6'8" for taking it down. He played the Tom Brady double. So Brady was 15% in this, Mike Evans 16%, Chris Godwin 15%. I also actually played this double, but I brought it back with Kyle Pitts like a stubborn fish. Bruh Man did the sharp thing and brought it back with Russell Gage, which I thought was fine, especially considering the context of how weak the wide receiver slate was. And then also he leaves his tight end spot open. And there were actually a lot of good tight end plays in the expensive range to get off of Moreau. He played George Kittle there, who obviously broke the slate. That made all the difference. He also had Miles Sanders, Sony Michel, Myles Gaskin, Steelers D. Great team. Congrats to Bruh Man 6'8". All right. Enough is enough. Let's get to everyone's favorite portion of the program, the listener questions. Producer Luke, hit the theme music. All right, appreciate all the questions from everyone. These are the ones I did not get to last week. Question 1 comes from Sawyer. This was actually a long question that he typed out in notes and sent in, but basically he asked why we don't set up a hedge fund of sorts for player props. Let people invest at the beginning of the year, pay out shares at the end, take a management fee. I think the standard hedge fund fee is 2% of the fund plus 20% of the profits or whatever. So this certainly isn't a new idea, right? There are sports betting syndicates and groups all over the world, tons of them. And at a high level, they all work in a similar way. A small group of people find the bets, originate their own lines, and then use the network/group to bet as much as possible across dozens or hundreds of books all over the world. And that can work in really liquid markets. I've been a part of a couple of different groups and it worked well. If you have 20 people betting 10K each on an NFL side or something, obviously the volume can really stack up, even if your expectation is only 3 to 5% ROI on each bet. The problem with setting something like this up for props, of course, is threefold, really. Limits, market liquidity, and accounts. Is it really worth setting up a hedge fund to get $300 limits on some accounts? Is it really worth it when those accounts are likely to get burned through quickly? And limited further? Is it really worth it when some of the lines move if they get breathed on, not allowing other accounts to bet them? So I think the answer to those questions are pretty clear. So to me, props are best done as an individual thing, as a side gig, not a get super rich thing, but something that can be a nice income boost because it's so soft and it's fun. We are 141 and 73 in NFL this year in player props, which is just absolutely absurd. We've won $5,978, assuming $100 units. I think $200 to $300 units are probably somewhat sustainable. So I don't think it's crazy to think that, 15K profits over an NFL season is possible if you have a bunch of accounts. I have money on like 15 different books in Colorado. And that doesn't even mention, if you're grinding NBA where we're 205 and 131 for 61.42 on the season, and there's like 4 months left, you can get a nice side income, really nice side income. So I don't think the hedge fund idea is really practical, but it is a really good market for side income, and it's a unique market, but it's really the best. Question 2 from Panda 87. He says, went to a dinner party and someone who was invited as a friend was a magician. He wanted to do all these tricks, and that meant that I'd have to interact and play along with the game. Should this be allowed at a party? I would never bring my computer and flex the spreadsheets on everyone. Yeah, good question. Can you imagine going to a dinner party and just like whipping out the conditional Excel sheets? You see, Mary, Antonio Gibson only fails 17% of the time here because JD McKissick has a damaged brain and is out. But as you can see by this regression model I built in Python, we can produce a 2.3% ROI by playing Terry McLaurin instead, that would be amazing to do at a party. It's just humiliating. But on the Magic thing, I actually think Magic is cool. And I'm actually really intrigued by really talented magicians. Like some of the stuff David Blaine does is definitely cool. Like even if you know that it's fake. So I always appreciate talent, man. I think I'm going to have to say that some virgin, Magic dude performing at a dinner party, I'm going to go ahead and call that acceptable. I got to call it acceptable. Question 3 from Jordan. He says, you mentioned you went to get your first cavity filled recently. How did it go? Are you an anti-dentite? Any tips for the dental team to make it more comfortable? Young dentist here. Yeah, obviously Jordan is referring to the Tim Watley anti-dentite stuff that was on Seinfeld. So good. Such a great episode. So I'm lucky. I never flossed once in my life, but I had 0 cavities ever. Then maybe a couple years ago, this dentist back in Philly says, Adam, you have the start of a cavity. We should really watch it close, whatever. I don't really buy it. And then I get out here to Denver. I find the dentist. I go, and they say that I definitely need a filling. And they're actually awesome. I do trust them. Actually, like really the best dentist I've ever been to. They use this numbing gel before they even do like the really hardcore cleaning, which made a huge, huge difference. Actually amazing. I can't believe I've never seen that numbing gel before. But anyways, I'm just like such a skeptical, cynical person that I don't really like it when incentives are misaligned. In other words, like I get that the dentists take this ethics oath or whatever, but their incentive is to make money. Deep down everybody's incentive, I think, is to make money. And I have no problem with that, believe me. But like when they do a filling or a root canal or who knows what else, I'm sure that's where they're making the most money. That's their GPP win. When they do a regular cleaning, that's like turning 109 into 200 in a head-to-head. It's great and all, but it's not moving the needle. So the dentist is incentivized to do these major procedures. I, with the shitty dental insurance and desire to keep needles out of my mouth, I'm incentivized the other way. And I'm sure no one else on earth thinks like this. I'm just like so deranged and cynical, but I don't really think there's anything we can do, other than get dentists that we can trust, which I actually do in this case. But yeah, in terms of actually getting the filling done, it was like shockingly not painful. Pretty amazing, actually. Shout out to me for being so tough and getting through it without any whining, no excuses. Play like a champion. Question 4 from Beller says, what would you say to your kids if they wanted to become full-time DFS pros? I think as long as they took it seriously and thought about the game and gambling the right way, or at least what I consider the right way, like I'd be cool with it. I wouldn't be cool with it if they were just like blasting some lineups in, trying to MME with no thought, just get lucky. If they were saying stuff like they were only a 4v4 away from the millie, berating opponents, complaining about bad beats, then no, I'm not cool with it. But yeah, if they understand that maybe 1% of the field, probably less, is making 6 figures a year, that they have to learn Python, that they have to be able to answer questions they have about strategy mathematically. If they like really deep down understand what it takes, then sure. Question 5 from Jack. He says, are weddings ever a plus EV cash flow event? And if so, When do they stop being so? I'm not sure I understand Jack's question fully, but I never understood this whole like money concept around weddings. Like a long time ago, I remember a really long time ago, my buddy was getting married and he said, yeah, you know, I don't really want to invite, you know, X person, but they're super rich and they're going to give us a big check. So we're definitely inviting them. And I don't know, I pushed back on that. I was like, man, this is your wedding, you know, super emotional, should be an intimate event among close friends and family, you know, not some ATM machine or capital allocation event or whatever. I know I'm as guilty of this as anyone, but not everything in life is an EV calculation. You know, like imagine looking at your wedding pics in 20 years, 30 years, there's tears in your eyes. You're remembering when you were young and skinny and regularly getting on the team. And those pictures are so beautiful. I love that everyone I love was there to share that time with me, especially that dude I barely knew, but wrote me a check for $2,000. You know, what a guy, you know? I mean, that's crazy, right? So I'm not sure that was Jack's question, but I hope that helps, Jack. Question 6 from the Heisman says, Adam, how would you describe what it's like being on the hashtag team to someone who has never been on the hashtag team? Asking for a friend. Assume said friend has experienced every other thrilling activity in life. Gambling, alcohol, having DOTL in cash weekly, etc. Yeah, I mean, man, I know I joke a lot about Stone Cold Virgins listening to this podcast. I really thought that was just a bit, though. I'll say this, the Heisman. Let's not call having, you know, DOTL, dick on the line, and cash one of life's most thrilling activities. I mean, we got to set the bar a little higher there. But really, yeah, I mean, Heisman seems like a good dude. I'm not sure if we have any female listeners out there. I hope we do, but I really don't know. If you are a female and you want to go on a date with the Heisman here, DM me and I will coordinate, you know? I'm out here to make dreams come true. Maybe we could do like a dating game show where Heisman gets to ask questions without seeing 3 young ladies, and then based on their answers, he decides who to go out with. You know, Stern did this with JD once. It was incredible. So that could be a good bit. So let me know. Question 7 from Uncle Hefe says, has Gender Labs done any studies on the HRM, hair receding model, for players like Hunter Renfroe or LeBron James? Is there correlation between the PSM and the HRM? The crazy thing about Renfroe is I actually knew he was a great play this past week. I used him in my Washington football team stacks. It's just crazy like how locked onto the middle of the field Derek Carr is. And with Waller out, I mean, it's just insane. But yeah, you know, I certainly have biases and it's certainly a leak. I think it's like, how can someone who looks like me be worth 5,800 on DraftKings.com? You know, how can someone who looks like me win against the best athletes in the world? It makes no sense. I can't get my head around it. But obviously, Renfroe, if you remove all the biases, is super strong. I mean, he was our 7th best value on DraftKings this past week. Ridiculous. To answer the question, though, the data is very, very clear. You know, LeBron and Renfroe are massive, massive outliers. Like the Venn diagram between the HRM, hair receding model, and the PSM, penis size model, is just like 2 separate circles. Like there's no overlap whatsoever. All right. Question 8, last question we're going to do today comes from Doug. He says, the solo pod alone is worth following you on Twitter. Are you ever going to have to grow up one day and not answer all these ridiculous questions from degenerates? I hope not. Yeah, thanks, Doug. I appreciate it, man. I really do. You know, someone asked last week on the podcast about how much money, you know, is enough for fuck you money, you know? And this question that Doug asked made me think, like, what if that number, the fuck you number, is simply enough where I can just do jokes on a podcast a couple times a week because I just really enjoy it. And I get that you can make money doing jokes. You know, people are doing it, but I don't know. I don't think this podcast is funny or really works without the edge grinding, you know, gambling DFS stuff. So if one day I didn't need money and maybe I'd like just doing the listener questions for the few people who actually just enjoy that, that might be cool. In terms of the growing up part, I mean, come on, Doug, growing up is not in the cards, buddy. I mean, I'm 39 now. I'm in the suburbs with 2 kids. You know, the big event in my week is like Maggiano's for dinner or like my 6-year-old's basketball game. And despite all that, I still think that dick jokes on the internet are funny. So I think the ship has sailed on ever me becoming a real adult. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Solo Pod. We'll be back later tonight with Silva to go team by team. If you haven't tried ETR yet, reminder, we do have weekly and monthly options available on the subscribe page. We'll be here doing our full content schedule through the Super Bowl. For producer Luke, for Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.